I've heard that.
She wants to.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Collins, and I am the Mashpee Town Manager. I will be moderating tonight's fifth and final public information session. We've had 4 workshops and 1 operational meeting regarding Article 4 on the Mashpee Town warrant for next Monday's town meeting, October 20th, 2025 at 7 p.m. I would like the panel to introduce themselves.
Mark Drainville with GHD.
Jerry Beater, Mashpee Wastewater Superintendent.
Meredith Harris, Sewer Commission.
Al Toll, Sewer Commission.
Ashley Fisher, Water Quality Coordinator.
Vanessa Jones, GHD.
For those who have not participated in early voting, precinct ballot voting relative to this article will take place on Saturday, October 25th, 2025, from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Precincts 1 and 2 vote at the Council on Aging. Precincts 3 and 4 vote here at Town Hall. And Precinct 5 vote at the library. Contrary to social media posts, the town has been very transparent in regards to the status of this wastewater cluster system. I take strong exception to any insinuation that any town officials or paid consultants have misled Mashpee taxpayers. Such accusations may result in a feeding frenzy for those who desire to pursue emotions on social media rather than facts in appropriate venues. Yet it is unbecoming to claim elected officials, dedicated professional staff, and expert consultants carrying out vital interests of the town are engaged in suppressing opposition. However, when critics make claims that are questionable or simply not true, expect it to solicit a response. In terms of transparency, the town has repeatedly explained what transpired with the surveyors who prematurely visited the neighborhood in question. No matter how many times it is explained, some deep, dark cloud of conspiracy seems to linger in the shadows from those that prefer cynicism over constructive dialogue and reasonable compromise relative to concerns. So here is a simple perspective. The town has identified a water quality crisis at Mashpee-Wakeby Pond. Scientific data supports this assertion. The town must address this major issue, or it will breach state mandates or potential court orders. It would be too costly to run sewer lines to the area in question. Rather than everyone installing an IA system, the town seeks to construct a remote wastewater treatment and recharge facility north of Mashpee-Wakeby Pond to remove nitrogen from the Pompanesett watershed. Additionally, and importantly, this facility will remove phosphorus to help the health of the pond. Some folks have suggested that when they purchased their homes, they thought this open space land would always be preserved. Native Americans have enjoyed that body of water long before any cluster development came along. Now the water is so polluted from development, we must collectively remedy the problem. The alum treatment plan alone is not adequate. The land in question is not Article 97 conservation land. The town has articulated the intent to only disturb the least amount of land necessary for the project and commits to designating the remainder to actual Article 97 land. Some have expressed concern relative to private wells. If funding is approved, the town must still go through the permitting process. If the state setback requirements are not satisfied, the town will not be constructing at this site. Some have questioned the timing. The town seeks to take advantage of principal forgiveness and 0% interest loans. So instead of spending about $46 million for this project, the town hopes to spend about $19 million for the project. The town seeks to avoid spending over $20 million in interest. Instead of it costing the average taxpayer $132 annually, we prefer to reduce the cost to about $54 annually. Finally, there has been a comparison to the matter before you in the Smith versus Westfield case. Although I was a criminal prosecutor in district court, I am not an expert in case law. However, a simple analysis of the elements in the Westfield case would suggest comparing the circumstances of the Westfield case to the circumstances in the Mashpee matter is like calling an apple an orange. I want to use a prop, like my friend Lynn Barbie's cart and horse. This is an apple, and this is an orange. This is a brief in the Westfield case, and I'm quoting. In Westfield, the property at issue, originally acquired by tax taking in 1939, became known as the Cross Street Playground, with 2 baseball fields and a playground located thereon, and was used by the public for over 60 years in that capacity. The City Council placed the property in the custody of the Playground Commission, passed an ordinance formally recognizing it as a playground, and included the property in its open space plan, recognizing it as public land with a full degree of protection and active recreational potential. Importantly, in 1979, the city received a grant under the Federal Land and Water Conservation Fund Act of 1965 to rehabilitate the playground, and signed a contract agreeing to comply with the act. The purpose of the act was to assure outdoor recreation resources for all persons, and importantly mandated that no property acquired or developed with assistance under the act shall be converted to any other public outdoor recreational uses without the approval of the United States Secretary of the Interior. In 2011, the City Council transferred the property to the school department for the construction of an elementary school. A group of residents sought to enjoin the construction, claiming the property was protected by Article 97, and therefore that the city was required to obtain approval of the general court to change the use of the property. The court held that the totality of the circumstances must be analyzed to determine if the city intended to dedicate the land permanently as a public park, and where the public accepts such use by actually using the land as a public park. To the court, the determinative factor, or the clearest expression of the city's intent, was the city's acceptance of the provisions of the act by which it forfeited its ability to use the property for any other use other than outdoor public recreation permanently without the consent of the federal government. So, again, that is straight from the Westfield case. I understand opponents argue about cost and location. I am concerned if we miss this boat to offset costs, the actual costs will skyrocket. In terms of location, I have heard reasons why it shouldn't go at the proposed site. However, I have heard of no viable proposed alternative that will adequately address the problem that collectively we are seeking to resolve. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent or to the engineer.
All right, so thank you for coming. This is our fourth of this public engagement groups, and then comes town meeting. So far, I think it's been a great process. It's really shown us what true democracy is supposed to be about, that people can come together and we can state our opinions. And I'm hopeful going forward that whatever the decision is, it'll be the right decision based off the town's wishes. Today we did have the site visit. For those who attended, thank you for coming. I hope that seeing the site can kind of put in perspective what we're talking about. I think everybody that was there could agree there wasn't smell, there wasn't sound. It's very compact. The leaching field is literally a field, and we plan to do way better than that. But it gave everybody an opportunity to see this. There we go. The open space property indeed. So last night we had a meeting before the ZBA. We were granted this variance based off of the fact that when this cluster subdivision is created, it was under a different set of rules of today, and it only required 20% of the land of the total land mass to be put into conservation. Moving all the way up to today, it's now at 50%. The total area of this property still doesn't encroach on that minimum land requirements, and that's why the variance was granted. So and the main reason behind that was because we had residents ask questions about, on their deed, it references this open space, and they want to know how that it would affect their deed, because if it became non-conforming lots or even more, it could affect their resale value of the house. Well, by granting this variance, we've now protected your deeds and your rights for your property. So that was one of the main reasons that really focused us going towards this, and we still don't violate the conditions of a cluster subdivision. So it was granted last night, and that is one of the many steps we're going to have to go throughout this whole process. The Smith versus Westfield case, the town manager really touched upon it, but the key point for me is throughout this process, we've heard a lot of very good faith comments and questions, but we're also getting a lot of people that are not listening to the whole answer and cherry picking some of the questions. And this was a great example. A case was brought forward and literally cherry picked certain lines out of it, and then kept using the word totality of circumstances, but yet didn't use the whole totality of the case to describe the circumstances. The town manager laid it out very well. And case law is a very tricky thing, because case law is based off of a specific case, and it can be used to guide cases in the future and how do you compare. But every case is different and ultimately would have to be argued in court. So I just wanted to just show the caution that it was good research, but needed to go a little bit further to make sure you cover the whole area and compare apples to oranges. Again, this is going with town manager said. I don't want to reiterate the slide, but if anybody wishes to look at it later, this will be put on the town webpage, and I want to make sure you had an opportunity to look at it instead of calling us going, where is this? Here it is. And it just lays out some of the key points. Again, as the town manager said, it does disappoint me that people think we're still trying to be misleading or deceptive. I feel we haven't. I feel some people have not liked the answers we've given them, and a lot of those answers have just been based around, we can't give you the answer because the cart before the horse. We got to make sure we have the funding before we can start the permitting process. They're not going to address these issues if we don't have the money. It's worse. So we have to try to get to this first hurdle, and then we'll go before the DEP. Things that were asked about was how close we are to wells. That is a model we have to put together. We have to prove it to the DEP that we would not hurt people's wells. They won't even look at it, though, unless we have the funding and it's a viable project. So it's not that we don't want to answer it and we don't want to prove it to anybody or anything like that, but there's a process, and we have to follow this process. And not following process could create more mistakes and have issues farther down the line. So I apologize if it's not happening as much as we're being accused of going too fast. Some people want things done faster, and we just can't provide them at this time responsibly. So that's what the basis of this case was, and if anybody wishes to see it, it will be attached to the slides. I won't bore anybody else with that information. And I'll hand it off to Ashley.
Hi, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of the pond. I mean, this was discussed at our first engagement session. but it really does hit home to a lot of people here who enjoy Mashpee-Wakeby Pond and have enjoyed Mashpee-Wakeby Pond since they were children. Starting in 2021, we were seeing reoccurring cyanobacteria blooms. Cyanobacteria are species that thrive in a nutrient-rich environment. Where the nutrients are coming from are septic systems. We know that. The accumulated phosphorus at the bottom of the pond turns over twice a year. When I say turned over, the water becomes less stratified and the nutrients become available to the surface waters. And that's when cyanobacteria critters can thrive. They take on that nutrient and they can go to a growth rate of exponential growth if the nutrients are readily available. So what we're seeing is a cyanobacteria bloom in the spring, during the spring turnover. The dominant species is producing toxins. The toxins are known to cause paralysis and some other health concerning conditions if exposure is high. What we're seeing now is a fall bloom. So the pond has gotten further degraded over time, and the fall turnover is now producing a cyanobacteria bloom. So now we not only have one reoccurring cyanobacteria bloom a year, we have two. That's just further signifying worsening conditions in Mashpee-Wakeby. If we do not act in sewering, we will have to continually apply what's called an aluminum sulfate treatment to the pond. It is a chemical treatment. It's used in drinking water applications and reservoirs, so it is safe. However, it is a chemical application. It's treating a symptom, not treating the problem. So if we continue to treat the symptom and not the problem, we're working against ourselves at the end of the day. So, I mean, if we don't sewer, we're going to continue to treat the pond with alum, and we'll have to do that indefinitely. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. In the past couple of meetings, we were taking the opportunity to respond to questions. Most of the things that have been coming up over the course of the past week have been perhaps new people who are new to the process. And so what we're going to try and do is just really emphasize some of the highlights for anybody who's new to the process. So the first thing is, why are we focused on this particular area north of Wakeby Pond? And there's several reasons. We're focused on nitrogen. That's the primary focus of the sewer implementation in the town. But in addition to that, we're also focused on phosphorus, as Ashley just mentioned. Phosphorus is a contaminant for Wakeby Pond. So it's not just nitrogen, it's not just phosphorus, it's both of those contaminants that we're trying to remove from the groundwater table. In addition, this area is subject to the IA regulations in town. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And also this area was a subject to a recommendation to evaluate as part of the update to the 2015 plan. So speaking of the 2015 plan, as some people have noted, this area was not slated for sewering. But one thing I want to emphasize is this is a 2015 plan. A lot has changed over time. There's a lot of things that have changed. One thing that I'll note is that this is the sandwich plan, and you'll see that, surrounding this area that we're focused on here is Sandwich's plan to manage wastewater. So this is an area that's important to manage wastewater in. So what happens if your Title V system fails? I'm going to go to the next slide just to show, this is the area that we're focused on right here. And this entire area is all subject to the town's requirements for transitioning to an IA system. An IA system is an enhanced septic system. And you would need to do that if you hit any of these requirements. Either you need a new septic system, you have a system failure, or you want to expand your home. So all of those conditions would require you to immediately have to put in an IA system. So IA systems cost at least around $45,000. Annual testing costs are around $1,000, and all these costs are borne by the homeowner. what happens in comparison with a collection system, a sewer system. The cost to connect to the homeowners anywhere from 6 to 15,000. The more common number we're hearing is around 7,000. The base bill for sewering, for having the sewer is around $800 a year. You could see that on the town website. And as you heard earlier from the town manager, the increase in taxes would be $54 per year. A couple of questions that, again, that have come up over the course of the past week that we've tackled before, but I just want to talk about again. We were asked, why on the site that we're looking at, and I'll show this site, why did we focus on this area? And the reason we focused on that area is to minimize the disturbance to this site as a whole. So we're trying to make the disturbance area as compact as we could. How many acres could we assign to each portion of this system? So we're looking at this being the treatment system, the subsurface treatment system representing approximately an acre, and then the subsurface system would represent less than 6 acres.
Add on to
Sure.
this?
Yeah, sure.
So I'd just like to add on to this because something actually came up last night during the ZBA, and I think that's where some of the confusion coming in. So this total area, when we talk about 7 acres, doesn't mean we're going to go in there and just clear cut 7 acres right now. That is not the intent. This area here, the leaching field, and then this area right here in the road is what we're going to address. This area here, one of the things the state requires is that if one of these recharge, because this is actually multiple little recharge fields, and there's always the potential one could fail. A good example would be grease, like in your septic system, plugs up the pipes, it doesn't percolate anymore, and the state says we have to have an area to be able to put additional fields. And I know the one thing people would really dislike is if we had to come back and ask for more land to be sliced out of this. So we already have the land sliced out, so we should never have to come back. If we never have an issue, we never touch that area. Additionally, one of the things we've mentioned is that we have approached Sandwich. Sandwich hasn't made any commitment yet. Again, we didn't want to come back and say, hey, we'd like to cut out more land so Sandwich can come on board. We've left the area available so if that does happen, we have the available land to put it. If they never decide to jump on or they decide to go a different direction, again, the land just stays not used and not cut. So I don't want anybody to think that we're just going to go in there and clear cut the full 7 acres. That is not the intent. And then less than an acre, I can't remember the exact number, it's like
About less than a quarter of an
less than a quarter acre is just for this easement, and it might look like a road on the paper map. It's not a road. It's just where we're going to be running the pipes, and we have to allow a 10-foot area. So if we bring, let's say the pipe fails, we have to get machinery in there, and we want to make sure we stay within a bounded area with that machinery. Other than that, if it grows over naturally, we're going to let it grow over naturally. If it gets used as a trail access for people to go walk the land, by all means, use it as a trail access. So I just want to make sure people are clear on that, because I think there was some perception that we were going to go in there and clear cut. And that is not the intent. And if we do have to cut any area back while construction's going on, the intent is to replant it with native species plants and bring it back so that it's only the usable area is what will be remained cut. So I hope that clarifies for some people the issues.
Yeah, and then the green area explained, is meadow. It's subsurface leaching field. It is grass-like, just for clarification.
The last item, just want to emphasize that we've been asked several times about the access road. The road that's on conservation property, which is the road right here. That road has pre-existing access rights to John Ewer Road, and that's currently being reviewed by the Mashpee Town Attorney as far as the access. This has been discussed already, but I want to just emphasize this is a subsurface treatment system. We have a very small building here. This is a subsurface leaching field. The leaching is not like what you would have on your septic system. This is a much cleaner effluent, but it is a subsurface system. And a couple of things to emphasize with this, as you've heard, this area, all this area where you can see my pointer here, this is all proposed to be Article 97 restricted when the project is done. The area within here, within the dashed, the bold dashed line here would be unrestricted area. So, and we have, just to explain this drawing, all these the green lines that you see here are existing tree lines, and there's trees all within here, and all that would remain untouched.
And I'd like to point out that also, like, we next week, we do have a meeting set up with the Native Land Conservancy to begin discussions about the Article 97 third-party stewardship.
At the tour today, we were asked about the schedule for the project, so we are sitting right here, right before town meeting. The project would need to complete its its permitting process and design process, would need to go to bid in the spring, and we'd have to have a contractor signed up by the end of June of next year, and it's about a 2-year process to complete construction.
Just going over some of the funding opportunities. When we go to connections for the individual homeowners, there is several entities where you can go to seek funding. Like Mark had mentioned, it's roughly a $7,000 charge. That's what we're seeing coming in our permitting right now. And that does include the decommissioning of the current septic system. For this phase, we're looking at more grinder pumps being installed. I think all properties will be grinder pumps, but those pumps will be owned, operated, and installed by the town. The homeowner is responsible for the individual connections to the pump. The Barnstable County offers a Cape Cod Aqua Fund, which is a 0% financing loan for a 20-year term. We did do the calculations, and I believe for a $7,000 fee, it was less than $100 a month for that, way less than $100 a month. 35, yes. And that is very easy to apply for, from what we've heard to the homeowners that have come to our office. They were very happy with the Cape Cod Aqua Fund, and there is people there, staff to help, and we know that there's funding there for homeowners to seek in the future. Another funding opportunity is through the USDA. It is a single primary homeowner residents are able to apply for USDA loans and grants for low to moderate income classes. And that program offers the grant, which is you do not pay it back as long as you stay in your residence for a 15-year period. And then there's also a low interest loan for the term of your mortgage. The Community Development Rock Grant is another funding opportunity that the town has taken on. That grant is similar to the USDA grant, and that's offered to low to moderate income homeowners, and it is a 15-year forgivable grant. So as long as you stay in that home for a 15-year period, you do not need to pay it back. There is also a tax credit that homeowners can apply for up to $18,000 for a 3-year period, and it does give you some monies back for home improvements. Secondary residence for the homeowners that don't live here full-time, Cape Cod 5 does offer a sewer connection loan, and that is also relatively low interest, but offered to secondary homeowners.
That's all we had for tonight.
At this point, I would like to open it up to any questions from the audience, and I would just ask that you come up to the mic because it is being televised, and just state your name and ask your question. This one here? That's fine, sir.
My name is John Trudnak, 1 Sneed Drive. Just for clarification, is the connection to the sewer system the properties surrounding Wakeby Pond, or is it beyond that? When you say the connection, 7,000?
So it's properties in Mashpee, and
All of the town of Mashpee?
So none of the properties in Sandwich. Is that your question? Is there?
No, I was just wondering if it was all the properties in Mashpee will be subject to this connection to the sewer eventually.
So the system's being designed to accommodate that whole area in Mashpee.
It's
More
the
the
whole,
whole area in the
question
map.
is whether or not it's going to apply to the entire town.
Correct.
And the answer is no, not at this stage. There are 5 stages or phases in the original plan. We've completed, or I should say we funded 1A, 2, and we're now focusing on this, which has been obviously well articulated. Where we go in terms of 3, 4, or 5 and modifications there too will be based on the data and based on policy-making decisions.
But this current phase is the Wakeby Pond area?
This is to focus on the north side of Mashpee-Wakeby based on data that I believe was distributed right in this room in, I think, December of 2024,
24, yeah.
I believe.
Being new to Mashpee, I've only been here a year, a little over a year. Is the Pompanesett watershed our primary water source for our town, Mashpee? And does the Wakeby ponds connect to this watershed? Where do we get our drinking water from?
Well, your drinking water is generally coming from the Mashpee Water District.
Yeah, that's treated drinking water from the groundwater, but we have 2 watersheds in Mashpee that are our watersheds that we take ownership of, our Wakeby watershed and our Papaneset Bay watershed. The Mashpee-Wakeby Pond is within the Papaneset Bay watershed. They're all interconnected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Mark McGuire, and I live in this neighborhood on Cation Way. Ashley Fisher, right? You mentioned the Cape Cod Aqua Fund, and you said it's 0%. Is that specific to this project? Because my system's less than 2 years old. I repaired it less than 2 years ago. And my loan through them is 4%.
Yeah, so for new sewer connections, it's 0 to 2%. It's tiered. There is a 4%, but that is if it's a different class. It's not for new sewer connections. New sewer connections are 0 to 2%, and that's based on income.
So do you know how you qualify to 0 versus 2%?
It's based on income class.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
There was a baseball player named Mark McGuire.
Jonathan Small, Sturgis Lane. First, I wanted to applaud you all for this remarkable process. It's really been extraordinary, so congratulations for that. Adding to Mr. Collins's list of things we've been hearing, it has been suggested that this project, if approved, will open some sort of a Pandora's box for other areas of town to be treated in the same manner. And I wonder if the town might want to respond to that.
I would love to respond to that.
Thank you.
There is absolutely no validity to that concern whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I've stated publicly, privately, and I'll say it again and again and again, the town is only at this particular location because of the specific problem to the pond. And the town is at this location because of evaluating all of its options. And this was really the only place for it to go. In other sections of town, we have other options. In other sections of town, we are certainly not looking to do anything that is going to disrupt anyone's life, or I should say lifestyle, in terms of enjoying their backyard or whatever their issues are. That is why we have carved this out in the manner in which it's been depicted. We wanted to disturb the least amount of property. We wanted to obviously do something that was going to be advantageous not only to our residents, but potentially to Sandwich residents that may want to hook on at a later date. And this is what we came up with. We realize that this is right at the Mashpee-Sandwich line, and yes, it's a Mashpee-Sandwich problem that's contributing to the pond.
And if I may emphasize that, I know I've heard a lot of those comments quite regularly, and some of the people that have been making those comments actually asked me directly, well, is this going to happen other places? And I never want to sit there and predict the future. But what I was really envisioning is, and I've said this before, that we could be a model for the rest of Cape Cod, because the issues we run into with availability of land, PFAS, all these other issues, and every time we turn around, the DEP sees to come out with a new restriction that says you can't do this. White Cedar Swamps is an example. Mounding is another example. These new emerging things that they say, oh, well, we want you to sewer, and you have to do this now, and you have a deadline, but we're not going to let you do it here, and then here, and then here. Sandwich is actually a great example where they had 8 years working towards a plan, and then literally not too long ago had a letter come from the DEP's lawyer saying, guess what, your plan's no good, we're not going to allow you. And they worked with them for 8 years with the DEP and said, your plan's scrapped because you can't connect to the base anymore, mainly because of the PFAS plume. So I always try to be cautious about predicting the future. But with that being said, what I'm more thinking that where it could go is cluster subdivisions are going to continue to happen in the future. And we always worry about laying out that open space. Well, how about when you lay out that cluster subdivision, you lay out a larger open space and make it a requirement of that cluster subdivision to put in a centralized sewer system for that cluster subdivision, as opposed to now making it another area that the town is going to have to pipe out to and then breathe back into it. Because even though we're sewering, every time we build a home, we're adding to the problem, and we're putting ourselves that much more behind. And you got to think about it, where we're going to make that up is 20, 30 years from now. 20, 30 years of inflation, you're adding tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars onto the overall project course because of the inflation rates going down the road. So if there's a way that the town and the planning board, and that's why I was hesitant, because I do not like to speak on behalf of other boards or publicly challenge them, because I would get upset if somebody did that towards my department. But that's more what I was envisioning, that we could take this as a model example, and then when the developers come up and say, hey, I got this piece of land, I want to put a cluster subdivision. Great. This is the open space, and this is how we want to use this additional area to protect our environment and not at the cost of all the other taxpayers. So it kind of, by me being hesitant, kind of opened it like, well, you didn't say no, and you didn't say yes, so we're going to say you're going to do this everywhere else, and that is not the intent.
So to those who are suggesting that other cluster subdivisions in town that have open space, that open space might be target for future wastewater systems that the town would come after, how would you respond to that?
That is not the plan.
It's not the plan, it's not the intent. And there is no indication from any policymaker that that is the direction that we're going in. This was a unique set of circumstances. I understand that the bells and whistles will go off when something like this occurs, especially when there's all kinds of, I'm going to say it again, misinformation being spread around. But at the same time, what I would invite them to do, if they really could take a couple minutes and get off social media for a second, come down here. We will make ourselves available. We've made ourselves available in 4 workshops and 1 information session or an operational session for a total of 5 meetings, as I said at the beginning. We will make ourselves available to any group, any neighborhood, or any person that says, gee, I'd like to come down, I've got this question, that question, this question, and that question, and I want to speak to a person direct. We will sit down in the conference room, make ourselves available. I mean, again, consistent with the time and the date that we're available to do so, but we'll do it at our earliest convenience, and we will provide answers to any questions that they may throw at us. And if we don't have the answer, we will go research it, whether it be through legal or wherever, and we will come back and provide the answer. But we are only trying to focus on improving water quality. And what I really take exception to is when anyone suggests that we are out to be a detriment to health and safety. My God, that's appalling.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Joe Silva from Pierre Veneer Drive in Sandwich. I apologize for my English, but I'll do my best. What I'm confused is you're doing all this sewage to prevent from polluting the ponds. On the other hand, you put a leach less than 1,000 feet from the water. I'm just on top of a hill, so I'm confused. That's less than a quarter of a mile. So it just doesn't make sense. On the other hand, I would have put the sewage treatment in a place where it would be efficient, more efficient, like 365 degrees around residential. You putting this on the corner of your town where only probably 90 degrees of only a few towns will benefit this, and not more than a few streets. Few streets are going to benefit, and not more than. So it's just, for me, it does not make sense. Like all these gentlemen in here, ladies and gentlemen, if you would have a house on my street, you would be here exactly doing what I'm doing, and probably you would have a lawyer, because we have a lot to lose. If our land gets contaminated, our houses will only be half of the price. Nobody wants to buy because we don't have town water and we don't have sewage. So we lose automatic. And then what we do? Put a big truck coming in for individual house. You probably use about 100 gallons a day of water for the laundry and showers and dishwashers and, all these things. So I'm really confused where you're locating this, between two ponds. And I know I'm not going to change no one's opinion in here because you already have made up. Are you an engineer?
I'm not an engineer now.
So you're part of this design?
Yes.
And we can answer your questions
Yeah,
if you'd like to.
I'd like to
You can answer
answer.
these.
So the difference between this is a subsurface treatment system. It is significantly better at treating than the Title V systems in the area. Title V systems don't take out really any nutrients.
I realize that.
This system will be taking out over 90% of the nitrogen, over 80% of the phosphorus. Because of the distance that this system is from the water body, Wakeby Pond, the soil is going to be taking up some of that phosphorus also. When it's very close, when the discharge is very close to the pond, there's not enough time for the soil to take it up. But because we are 1,000 feet away, the soil will take up some of that phosphorus too. So there's a significant decrease in the nutrients from the treatment system and from the soil because of the distance.
And if I could also add, and you weren't here for the meeting, so I apologize, but, so what it is when it goes into the ground, you're north of it, and the water actually flows south.
Yeah, supposedly. But look at what happens in Falmouth, 10 miles away from the base, and they pay for 10 miles. So there's houses only 100 feet away from the border, 100 feet. We're not talking about 100 feet. And the leash going to be there. And I'm a little further up, but I'm still be affected. So we worked so hard, just about everybody, to have the dream house. And now you have this thing, not just in your border, and we were not even notified. Now, supposedly, clear and all this, and you notified people about a half a mile down the street, but you didn't notify someone 100 feet away from the leach. And I believe that people dropped the ball.
So we were honoring the requests of your town. They've been watching, and we've communicated them through our intermunicipal meetings. But they don't want to commit to anything because they want to see how this pans out. They want to see what we're developing, and then they're going to comment. They asked us, because we've had residents actually call us from Sandwich going, we want to tie into this, how we do it. Contact your town administrators. We were asked not to speak directly to the residents about these individuals.
I mean, 100 feet away from the leach.
Correct. And again, we have to go through permitting process, and that's what I was talking about, this process. So we have to prove to the DEP that we're not going to contaminate those houses up there. If it even remotely looks like it, DEP is very cautious. They'll say, no, we're not going to authorize this, or you need to find another way. And then we have to continually monitor, monthly basically. We have to monitor these wells and what our discharge is and what the impact is to the environment for the remainder of the life of this system. So it's not like we just
Okay.
set it and forget it.
Okay, so you're going to test the fields, like you all come to my house and test it on my property?
The DEP will tell us where to put monitoring wells, north and south, so up gradient and down gradient. This happens at every wastewater plant, and then every month, we go out and we take samples from those wells, and then they compare it to see what the impact is over time. And if it starts going in a direction they don't like, they'll start telling us we need to address it. If it ever just jumps on it, they'll say, this is what you need to do now.
Because the sad part is, by the time I find out that it's contaminated my well, I've been drinking water, taking showers and all that. And then it's too late because some effects will be done already. So, and I don't know how you're gonna then get in touch with us because we're in a different town. So by the time that happens, it's too late. Eventually, my opinion is down the road, 10, 15 years, I hope I'll be around. I'm 78, but I hope that eventually it's going to leach and spray and will be contaminated some of the wells in my street. And then what's going to happen? Let's avoid lawsuits now. I mean, not now, down the road, and do something different. Because eventually, if it will be contaminated, lawsuits is coming around.
So this process is very carefully monitored by the state. There's a very sophisticated model that the state requires to ensure that the public health is protected.
Yes, but nothing is guaranteed, only taxes and debt, as we know. So, things, you put in the top of the hill, and eventually it's just the houses. What am I going to do now? I'm stuck not stuck. I can bail out now and leave it, but I love the water so much. I'm coming from a small island. Everything, my blood is water. So, and that's why I live in Peters Pond since 2008. So I'm right on the water side. So it's just, I'm really confused about physical. Yes, I'm for sewage. Yes, the sewage will protect the water, but don't put the leach 1,000 feet from the water. And it's not efficient because you don't know using the 365 degrees of all the roads around to come into this treatment. Well, thank you.
So I just want to add one thing. I mean, right now, all of the septic systems in that area are going into the same groundwater, and what we're proposing to do is just to collect that, treat it to a much higher level, and put it into the groundwater. It's going into the same groundwater.
I'm not against the treatment. It's just the location. I think it would be more efficient if they would have put it, number one, away from the ponds, because the whole purpose is to protect the ponds, and two, be more efficient with more streets would benefit more houses to come in. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Good evening, Sharon DiFrancesco, Situate Road. I wonder if anybody on the panel could maybe give an overview, and it's a little bit of a different track, but just how the state might come into play if Article 4 does not pass.
So if Article 4 doesn't pass, that means we didn't approve the funding, and then ultimately this project as it stands right now is just dead. Nothing gets done up there right now.
The money,
Sandwich eventually will address it, but I think it's in like the year 20 of their plan, so it's 20 more years of this pond degrading.
the money would be forfeited. Right now, there's money that the town has, was awarded, I guess, if you will, a loan and grant program, and that money would be forfeited.
So the big concern, if I could, is the money that will be sacrificed in terms of the forgiveness as well as the money through the 0% interest loans. The difference, as I mentioned at the beginning, is somewhere between 19 million versus 46 million. So there's the loss of that money. And if the position is we do nothing, I think the catastrophic thing in all of this is the ponds, and I say ponds, Peters as well, continues to decline. And at some point, whether it be, because people have spoken about potential litigation, what have you, eventually, whether it be the Conservation Law Foundation, somebody's going to come knocking on our door, and they're going to go in a different direction. We're not doing enough, so therefore, we're going to be in court for a different reason, and that's trying to defend what we haven't done. So it's almost a damned if you do and damned if you don't. And but the two things that are at risk, as I see it, in simple terms, is the loss of funding, number one, and number two, if we do not do anything to address the condition of the pond, then what is it going to look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now? And what are we going to be able to say when we're under a state mandate or a court mandate to do something that now might have been addressed in a different way that would have been a lot less costly?
I agree. From my understanding, I agree that, yes, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's going to cost us money, one way or the other. If we don't do it now and pay a lot of money, then we're going to do it later and pay even more money. I totally get that. What power does the state have over waltzing in and saying, okay, you guys didn't get it done, so is it simply they'll let us do it our way, but it's going to cost more, or they're going to do it their way and everything we've done up to this point is for naught?
So in this watershed permit model they gave us two options. You can do a 5 years, everybody has to be on an IA system. That was option one, which they even said in their own meetings, we don't want anybody to take that. Or you take option B, which is you come up with a watershed permit plan. You have 20 years to get 75%, and then an additional 20 years to do the remainder 25%.
Homes?
Yeah, or the reduction of nitrogen in the TMDL. Not the homes, but to meet that TMDL, the total maximum daily load. And but the sad fact is IAs wouldn't solve the issue. We would they will not solve the issue on their own. We have too much of a nitrogen issue that we would still have to sewer, which we've done a lot already. We're actually pretty far ahead of the ballgame. This area here specifically was never part of the 2015 year plan. And a lot of it's just because of the location, lack of land. There's a lot of areas, there are a lot of issues there. We re-looked at it and came up with this out-of-the-box way of thinking, which we do believe could be a model for future towns who are going to run this. We're not the only area that's dealing with this. We're dealing on Martha's Vineyard on what they call the Lake Street area, too far away from the plant. We were actually starting to look at and we were looking at a cluster system, and they're actually in the process of right now of putting that together by the Tashmoon Landing. So it is not a unknown thing, but this is just a unique option for these hard-to-reach areas that if we can do now, can benefit us in the long run. Because if we do this area now, that's 4% we get to cut out of our future sewering at a more expensive cost. We're just handling 4% now at a cheaper cost at an earlier time. And in this case, what really put it over the top is we're now addressing the freshwater, because that is the next TMDL coming. Even though it's not mandated right now, it's coming. Do we want to wait when it's more expensive? Or can we actually tackle this problem now? And I think that's what makes it an actually exceptional project in this case.
the $54 a year number that's been tossed out, and of course, that's just one project is going to cost us that, and other projects, of course, have cost us X amount of dollars per year. What is that, the 54 a year, for how long?
30 years.
Okay.
That's the average.
Okay. So, I think some people look at this particular project and say, well, it's only touching, what, 220 homes
Roughly.
down there?
Roughly.
We've got an entire town to deal with, and you guys are, throwing 19 million, sorry.
I wish it was 19.
I know, right? 19 million at this one little section. Is it because everything is flowing south, and we just, if we start at the top, I mean, I know this maybe seems really very basic, but is that why that location is so important?
I'm going to let them answer, but I think one of the things that was extremely appealing administratively is when you take a look at this and put it all in perspective, it wasn't just the nitrogen impact, it was the phosphorus. That is what really started to tilt this in a direction where this is the most logical plan, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's true. We wouldn't do it just for nitrogen, we wouldn't have done it just for phosphorus. It's the combined benefit.
But over a bigger area because of its location, it just seems, I think some people look at it and say, oh my gosh, oh great, those 220 homes are all set. We're paying for those 220, I don't live anywhere near those 220 homes, but I'm gonna pay for it. But there must be a bigger picture here.
So phosphorus, not all the homes, the phosphorus that comes in the homes affect the pond. Phosphorus does get, as we said earlier, gets reabsorbed in the ground before it gets to the ponds after a certain distance. So everything else we're sewering doesn't address the ponds issue. It addresses the estuaries and our salt water, but not the pond. But we've clearly seen this year with both of our turnovers having these cyanobacterial blooms, the pond is rapidly getting worse. So that's it, and it actually wasn't as bad when we started this process, but it's now proven us right that it's happening much faster than we're even anticipating. So thinking about it, I was like, okay, when I talked about this in the early things, everybody's like, well, this is a nitrogen issue we're dealing with, not phosphorus, and they don't fund for phosphorus. We know they don't fund for phosphorus right now. But because we're building a nitrogen system that's also going to do the phosphorus, we're going to get the state to pay for it right now. And that was the benefit. A lot of people are insinuating we're not addressing the other issues. Since last year on our capital improvement plan, we've already had the phase 3 on that plan since last year. And it's not that we're not working towards it, it's just a much more difficult area. And today during our sewer meeting, Mark actually showed a great, to me, I think the best representation of what we're dealing with the PFAS plume, which pretty much covers the whole area of Wakeby where we have recharge. And the state's saying, they're not saying we can't discharge there, but we have to do a lot of proving and a lot of extra work to discharge the area. So it's not that we're not working towards it, it's just we're putting something in the middle because we already had pre-designed in there a gap because we knew this was going to be an issue. And we said, well, let's take advantage of this gap while the money's available, because next year they're proposing 90% cuts in the SRF funding, so the money won't be there next year. So even though we have it on our plan for next year for phase 3, it might not be even an option. We have to kick that another year because of the lack of funding from the federal government. So we haven't stopped anything. We just kind of fit this in there because of that phosphorus issue and what we saw at the pond. We see an opportunity here. Let's not do what our predecessors did 20 years ago when they were handing money out going sewer. We said, we don't want that. We don't want the skyscrapers that come with it. Well, skyscrapers don't come with it, and now we're dealing with the effects of kicking the can down the road.
I'd also like to address something that you said. You're concerned about it only affecting 200 houses. However, when we start to look at the whole overall big picture, the first thing is that this area that we're looking at, the Wakeby area, is at the top of the Papaneset watershed. So that by affecting Wakeby, the water is then flowing down into Mashpee Pond, then into Mashpee River, then into the estuary, and then into the bay. And it all started with the state saying, your salt waters are impaired by nitrogen. And so the studies that have been done over the last 20, 30, 40 years have shown that the nitrogen is coming from where in the watersheds, and that's why it's been addressed by looking at now, right now, the top of the watershed. And the study that was done on Mashpee-Wakeby Pond showed that the greatest impairment was in Wakeby, and that's affecting all the way down to the bay. But the other thing, if you look at the overall plan, the 2015 plan that the state approved is done in phases. There's no way that we could sewer or provide the sewering or the wastewater treatment for all 10,000, 15,000 residents here in Mashpee. So the first part of the plan was, okay, the wastewater treatment plan, that opened just, a few months ago, and that's going to be affecting close to 400 houses, or residences, we don't want to just say houses. And then the next part of it will be, phase 1A, and that's going to affect another 100 and something houses. And then phase 2 will be affecting another 200 or more houses or residences.
1,200.
How many?
1,288.
So when you begin to look at how the plan is all put together, this has been in the works since 2015. But the actual implementation started back in 2021. So now we're at 2025. So the time is moving forward, but Mashpee has been very forward-thinking. The town manager and the town staff have been very forward-thinking in looking at how can we meet the state requirements of removing 75% of the nitrogen out of the watersheds, two of them, Papaneset watershed and Wakeby watershed. How can we do that over 20 years, and how can we do it so that it'll cost the least amount of money to our taxpayers? So being able to find state money, federal money, grant money, all the different ways that these plans have been manipulated, put together in so many different ways to say, how can we get the best results, the least cost, in the fastest amount of time, because if we don't meet the state requirements of 75% of the nitrogen coming out of the watersheds, and this is for all the towns on Cape Cod, then the residents of the towns would have to then put in innovative alternative IA systems individually. And the town said, we really do not want to see that happen. We will develop our watershed plans, and we will take our 2015 plan that was approved by the state, look at how that's changed. That was 10 years ago that was approved. The environment has changed. The world has changed. The money available has changed. Mashpee is on a phenomenal trajectory in trying to meet those requirements, and it's on a good track right now. If we look at, phase 1, phase 1A, phase 2, and I call this 2+, because it begins to address, and you say 4%, only 200 homes. Yeah, but by putting all these together, we're getting close to 45% of nitrogen being removed from one watershed. So if we say, nah, we don't really want to spend the money. Well, we didn't really want to spend the money back in the 1960s. And that's why we are where we are now. Our water is degraded, and now it's costing huge amounts of money to try to repair it. And this is every town on the Cape. But just as Jared said, Mashpee is becoming a model. There are a number of towns that are models. Chatham was one of the first treatment systems. Pleasant Bay is a model. 3 towns got together and cleaned up Pleasant Bay. But there are 15 towns on the Cape. Mashpee is now one of 50% of the towns that applied for this state revolving fund money that got it. 50% of them did not get it. And we're trying to say, okay, that's okay. We don't want it. We'll come back for you to the state and say, well, give us some money in another year or so. It may not be there. But it won't be there as an exchange for a different project. So we're moving toward the next phase, the next watershed. Wakeby watershed is the next part that's been in the planning also for almost 2 years, and has run into some major concerns about how to move it forward given the environmental issues that we're dealing with as we go forward. but it's in the plans, it's in the works. So we can say, okay, we'll stop right here.
And if I may,
We can't.
I want to be clear, we're not saying that if you don't vote for this, you don't care about clean water. That is
No, that's not the
not
point.
what we're
That's not
saying,
the
and
point at
people
all.
think is that what we're trying to say. There are other reasons why people might not vote for it, and we weren't doing these meetings to ask for your vote. I've said in the beginning, there's a project here, and we wanted everybody an opportunity. I think we can build the best project. It wasn't until after we started when somebody said, hey, we should, maybe reach out to the Native Land Conservancy. I said, that's a great idea, and I went and asked questions, and they said, what would this entail? So, well, we have to have native access rights. Well, what's that? Cultural, religious, harvesting, all these things that were probably, yeah, that's a benefit to them. Can it still be used for the regular residents as open space recreation? Absolutely. Okay, so multiple people get to benefit from the area. We can clean up our water. We can reduce costs by doing it now. So that's what I wanted people to help is brainstorm to make this, to show that water and land conservation, traditionally it seems to be two different groups of people that can't seem to meet. Well, this could be an example where we can make a project that benefits everybody, that can hopefully start breaking down some of those walls where it's like it's either land or it's water. No, we can do this together. We can promote building a habitat for the endangered New England cottontail. We can do pollinators. We can do, it could be anything we want. And that's what the whole gear towards is not asking for a vote. How can we make this better? We felt we had a great technical project, but right off the bat, the reason why we moved the road was based off residents' concerns. And then we say, hey, you know what, that actually is better. It would save us a lot of money not having to fill in these huge holes. And I don't know if you've ever been out there, but like when you go to Ender Gunter's at the cul-de-sac, it seems like the area everybody puts their lawn clippings in the trees, the Christmas trees, into that hole. And I stood there and I was like, wow. And all I thought was a meteor hit this thing 10,000 years ago because it's perfectly round and it's deep. That was going to be an issue for us to get into this area. So we didn't look anywhere else. And then when the residents said, hey, we don't want you using the end of this cul-de-sac, we looked someplace else. We said, well, this will be cheaper. It'll be outside that area, and we can condense it all into one area and minimize that impact, and then actually open up the remainder of this area to be used as Article 97. So that was an example of how, based off comment, we adjusted our plan. So please don't take that as if we're saying, you don't vote for this, you're not for water quality. We know that's not the case. There are other personal issues that people might not like it. And it could be as simple as I don't want my backyard, and people think that's like a bullying tactic. That's a legit concern. I just had a 40B project proposed behind my house. My first thought was not in my backyard. And then I had to go, well, that makes me a hypocrite. So I went in there and said, okay, how can we make it better? And that's what we're asking for now. So it is a legit concern, and it could be a concern, it could be many other things, but please do not think that we're saying, if you don't do this, you're not for it. We're not saying that.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think we circled around to my original question, which was, what role does the state play? And basically, the state called us to the carpet, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong. State called us to the carpet. We had to rise to the occasion. Manager, you used a phrase that I've been saying for too long. We're damned if we do and damned if we don't. But if we don't, it's just going to cost a lot more later because we have to do it. So
That's my biggest concern. And I understand a lot of people in this room are going to pay the price. Including...
in our kids.
Yes, including myself. And I want to reiterate what the superintendent just mentioned. This isn't personal. There are some legitimate concerns that are brought to the table. We listen, we try to adapt, we try to improvise, we try to do all of those things. The gentleman out back very genuinely, passionately made his concerns known, and I appreciate you coming in. I think it's the first time I've heard you, so I appreciate you showing up. The lady over here has expressed some concerns that we've listened to very carefully. All we ask is just don't think we're acting in bad faith, regardless of how you vote or how you feel. We're not acting in bad faith. We're trying to do the right thing here for the interests of public health. We're trying to improve the water quality in the town of Mashpee. And if you disagree with the plan, you disagree with the plan.
I think lastly, I'll just say, this is a very complex expansive project. A lot of moving parts and a lot of people affected. You're not going to make everybody happy all the time. It's just one of those things. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. And from what I've seen, you've done a great job with what you had to work with the limits you were given, with the rules you were given, with the timeline you were given. So thank you. I'll second the thank you for all your hard work, and look forward to seeing it completed. Thank you.
I think one of the important things also to recognize is that we really benefit so much from what people have said. This plan has been in the works for over 2 years. It's been adjusted, it's been looked at, this one, the Wakeby, Mashpee cluster, the whole sewer plan's been in investigation since 2015 when the plan was approved. But this, like you said, it's a huge project. Mashpee's never had a sewer before. How many towns do have sewers? So it's an unknown area. And the work that's been done has been amazing, but the most important work has been hearing from you as residents to say, yeah, but have you thought about this? And we don't expect you to be telling the engineers, well, do it this way or do it that way, because you're not engineers, but you can say, but did you think about this? And one of the things that I thought has been so beautiful about this whole process is that you've talked, they've listened. You've talked, there's been a different design from when it was 5 sessions ago. And so it's important that you realize that you have a say in what's going on, and it's a very complex problem. But if we're going to be able to solve it, we've all got to think about it together. And it's so important that everybody has a voice. Whether you agree with what the other person is saying, it's okay. It's okay, that's what democracy is about. Voice your opinion. And then come back to us, representing the town, being able to say, yeah, but we did consider that, and these are the issues that went with that, and this is why we can't do it that way, but we did think of a different way to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I have to applaud the engineers and the staff who are redesigning as they go. Solid plan. It's a solid plan with minor tweaks and adjustments. Any of you who have ever done any kind of a project, whether you've built a house or whether you've crocheted an Afghan, it changes from the original design, from what it looks like when you finish with it. And that's where we're going. We're crocheting a huge project.
Thank you.
So thank you for your comments.
Hi there, PJ Dupuis, Pierre Bernier in Sandwich. Can you put up the map that shows the proposed site? Can you tell me from the Mashpee line to the green square, how much space is there between the Mashpee line and that leaching?
Here?
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it was 50 feet in the buffer, the setbacks
be
are required 10.
Okay,
Like 50.
so it might be 50 feet, as much as 50 feet. The setback is 10, the requirement's 10, so somewhere in that range.
Okay.
And maybe this will also help. I actually explained this when we were out at the site visit, and I should have said it earlier when I was talking. So this area in green is for the least efficient subsurface treatment system. It's big and it's required by this. We've already started the process of asking for other alternative recharges that would be a smaller footprint. There's just no guarantees we're going to get it. So what we outlined was worst case scenario. The intent would be different companies like Geomatrix, if you want to go look it up on the internet, is a style that we're looking at which allows you to shrink the field by designing the recharge area, the leaching. So, but what we wanted to present was worst case scenario, because if we presented the short one and then only get stuck with this, I think people would have been more upset.
Okay, so your first 50-page PowerPoint presentation, you had someone walk through the woods and show, how many feet, 150 feet, you couldn't see. 50 feet from that Mashpee line, this is 50 feet in my backyard. So you can clearly see that 50 feet, this is 50 feet, this is 20. That's a vest, you know, so that when I walk my dog, I don't get shot. So in my backyard, where this is proposed, when you go past that 50 feet, it slopes down about 40 to 45%. It's a slope. Like sometimes you have to grab onto branches to get up the hill. And the bottom of that pit that you say, the crater, is in my backyard. So I'm curious with that leaching field, you're saying that's a great location because otherwise there's a pit. That is the pit. And so are you going to be putting a lot of backfill, and then will there be a wall on that leaching field for the green space that you propose for Article 97?
So that, right now, that's what we're designing right now. So we're looking at I hesitated when I initially, because we're in the process of designing it around, kind of around that deep spot. So we're looking to work at the top portion, perhaps looking at terracing. So we're looking at different options for that area.
So it's not going to be flat,
I don't know that yet.
which is the green space you've been saying that people can have picnics on. Is that, so it might be terraced?
I can't tell you exactly what it's going to be like. We're looking at, we're in the process of going through this with the state right now with a permitting process. So,
Okay, because you said that that was the best space because there was a big pit. That is the big pit.
so this was the best place because it reduces the impact, the area that we would disturb.
Yeah, the pit I was talking about was originally, there's another hole. It's actually very impressive, right here. It's a very, very deep, like you said, in that other pit, it's the same thing. It's a very deep slant area. So like Mark just said, we're looking at different layouts. Like it doesn't have to, we're just trying to show this is the general area, because we don't have it designed yet, but people want to see it. And so we just laid out, if it was flat, it could be, we looked at wicks. I don't know if you've ever heard of wicks, but wicks is basically like a giant pipe that goes straight in the ground. Your literal leaching field is this big around. Unfortunately, we've discovered that we're too close to the groundwater. You need a certain amount of elevation where you're able to do it. There are other technologies that are like a wicks, a little bit bigger. Again, smaller footprint area, a matter of, I don't know, a couple yards in size. So we haven't gotten the approval from the DEP, so what we wanted to show is a worst-case scenario. And I did say at the beginning of this whole process, we're not done with the public engagements. As we get information, maybe it could be as much as monthly or quarterly, we want to do updates. Like when we actually have a physical design, we want to be able to present it to people and get some feedback before we finalize it and dedicate money to it. So as we get approval from DEP for certain things, we intend to either hold engagements or make sure it gets on the webpage, do push notifications, whatever, so people can look at it. I would prefer to have a meeting like this where people can physically come in, touch it, look at it, and throw ideas. So we're just showing the worst case scenario. If we had to go with the biggest area, but it doesn't have to be perfectly flat. The one we visited today has a slight slope. That's one example. We can keep it as close to natural as possible, but there will be some things we might have to bring in fill or build a wall in certain areas just to meet a certain area, depending on what the DEP approves.
Last week, I thought I heard you say that you would check the water twice. Tonight, I heard you say you were going to check it monthly,
Check the water twice.
the cleanliness of our drinking water from our wells.
So no, what we have to put it in the monitoring wells. So I said before and after, so we'll do a check beforehand, you have to put a monitoring. So like this plant we built now, we had to do a pre-construction well monitoring, and now when we monitor every month in our permit, they compare it. If it starts getting worse or we see mounding, but specifically for the water, that was one of the suggestions when we were talking about that we'll do a pre-check and then post-check, absolutely, but we're always checking. We have to do an upgradient and downgradient, and if we see deterioration in any of those things, the DP will tell us right away, hey, you got something going on here, you need to fix it. So there will always be monitoring. But I'm saying for you, for specifically, you'll be checked before and after construction, but we will always be checking. So maybe I wasn't clear enough last time.
And I will say that the reason for checking the wells, there's two reasons. There's what's called an up-gradient well, which would be up-gradient of the leaching field, and then there's down-gradient wells. The up-gradient well is to show what the groundwater looks like without having the impact of the recharge water. And the downstream wells show the impact of what's going into the ground. So there's the reason for putting the well up here is just to show that you're not going to have any kind of an impact.
Who's not going to have an impact?
That well would not show any impact from what goes into the ground because the gradient is going, all the flow is going down in this direction. I mean, that's why we're having problems with the coastal estuaries. All the nitrogen is flowing downward towards the coastal estuaries. That's the fundamental reason why all the nitrogen's ending up there.
And last week, I heard you say that you would probably be within 100 feet of our well, and I just want to understand. I was shocked, so I wasn't really digesting what you were saying.
I guess what I was saying, I didn't say we would necessarily be within 100 feet. Our goal is to stay 100 feet away.
At a minimum.
Yes, yeah. And the reason I can't be specific right now about how far is because we are looking at, as Jared mentioned, we're looking at a more efficient layout. We're trying to shrink the size of this, which is going to move it away further. So that's what we're doing right now.
Move it like closer to the dotted line?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're trying to move it further away from the town line.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
We started out with a different layout, and we've been working on a different layout for the past few months, so different layouts.
Sorry, Caroline Wu from Pierre Veneur Drive. First, I wanted to acknowledge all the efforts that you've put into this project. Sorry, but I have some concerns about the safety and equity of using John Muir Road as an access point, because I don't think those issues have been addressed. So I think for many people, they look at John Muir and they see this line on a map, and they don't realize that there's a whole community of people who live up there and depend on safe access to get to their homes. And so I know that initially the thought was to go through Gutcher's Lane, and the residents there voiced concerns about safety in their neighborhood, and so other locations were looked at, and I think it was acknowledged that the amount of traffic that would go through would not be suitable for that road and maybe not even safe. So at this point, I don't understand why John Muir would be considered a safe or viable alternative. That road is visibly more narrow than Gunter's Lane. It's heavily vegetated on both sides. It's not like a residential street where you can see on the sides. There are blind curves there. And I also don't understand how it's equitable if the residents of Mashpee oppose going through their streets to then come to another town street for a facility that's not even in our town. You know that Dunroman has a campground there, and there are 43 families. So their kids, their families are walking with their coolers and their beach chairs and their dogs down that narrow road. And there are people who have mobility challenges that if a truck goes around a blind curve, they're not going to be able to jump out of the way in time. Then there's also the Pierre Veneur residents who use that to run and walk. So I think introducing that heavy construction traffic is going to cause a lot of risk. And because of the size of the road and the size of the construction trucks, I think that there is a chance that you will delay emergency vehicles like ambulances, police or fire trucks from getting to the residents in Pierre Veneur because there's no other way to get there. And even a few minutes delay can make a big difference between a good result outcome and an outcome that is not so good. So I know that you don't have permission to go there, so you're looking through this easement, which I would think would be for conservation, maintenance, like if a tree falls down or if you had to put up that gate. But I guess despite the fact that you're doing that, and also I didn't realize that John Muir Road was actually designated a scenic road in Massachusetts. So that road, I don't think the intention was to have heavy construction vehicles go through there. So I guess I don't understand how, for the safety of our residents, why seems safe when it's not safe for the Gunter's Lane resident, when this road is just as equally or more limited? In terms of equity, if somehow the residents oppose it there, why is it equitable to put it into our neighborhoods?
So it wasn't necessarily moved because it was any more or less safe than Gunter's Road. That was the argument that was brought to us by the residents. And like we said, if somebody brings us an issue, we're going to try to look at address. We never looked north, and when we looked at it, we realized, bottom line, cost-wise, it is a better option for us. Plus, it allowed us to really cluster the system together. The result of the use of Gunter's Lane was the reason why the residents brought it forward, and as we promised, we will look into it, and that's what made us look at another area just to see. So our reason in not moving wasn't necessarily because of that safety. It would be safer for them. But also, I don't think people realize we're not building another treatment plant like we just built in Mashpee, where you have 2 years of construction going on. I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, you're going to see less construction vehicles than if you built a new house. So if it survived home building, you're definitely, because everything is precast tanks, it goes underground, and we're building a much smaller building than a standard home. So the traffic, and then once it's built, you're going to get a septic truck come about once every month and a half, 2 months to take out the solids, and you're going to have a pickup truck that will come and check the building, especially in the beginning daily, but it's going to be what they call a SCADA system onto it, so we don't necessarily have to be there every day. We did hear concerns about, well, what if you have to bring in chemicals? Now, chemical trucks can get big, but we can also get chemical drums in 55 gallons. We would have that delivered at our main plant, and it would go on that pickup truck when it does its round. So we wouldn't be bringing heavy equipment through, nor will any heavy equipment ever be staged on that road during construction. It's just not allowed. They would come in, get onto the site, and do what they have to do, but everything would be precast, brought in, dropped, and they would leave. And it wouldn't, and we can put restrictions like, hey, listen, if you're gonna do deliveries, you can't do them between these hours. You can't start before this, you can't come after this. We're doing actually in our phase 2, we have restrictions on when you can be on roads and when you can't be on roads. And so we would, try to best accommodate the residents, or at least give notification, because they have to do a traffic plan 2 weeks out. So if they plan on being in an area, but we're not laying pipes, we're not doing any actual structure in the road, and if we damage the road, we are obligated to fix the road. We are absolutely obligated. We just can't say, oh, well, sorry, it's your issue, it's in Sandwich. If we damage it, we have to fix it.
Okay, well, I still have concerns.
Yeah,
about
absolutely,
safety.
I understand. I absolutely understand.
And then in terms of the monitoring wells, so is mounding not a concern for this leaching field?
So mounding is, I just want to make sure everybody understands, mounding is the groundwater table going up slightly, and it's primarily a concern with freshwater bodies. So if you raise the groundwater level up too much, it could influence the freshwater bodies like a vernal pool and change the environment. We won't be doing that here. It's the mounding is low for this.
Because you can't put enough water to create mounding.
Yeah.
And then, I'm sorry. In terms of, so I know you said that, the amount of wastewater that you're putting here, you're just collecting from one area to another. But that area has like 210 homes, and let's say each parcel is a third of an acre, so you're leaching 210 homes over 70 acres, where you're leaching 210 homes over 1 acre. And so everyone's pharmaceuticals, all the things that they're drugs that they don't metabolize, that gets excreted in their urine and stool, are washed off. All those pharmaceuticals, and it's not just one home, it's a mix. So you have narcotics, illicit drugs, you have antibiotics, hormones, cancer treatments. So all those pharmaceuticals are coming into one place. And also PFAS is all that PFAS is going into there. So, and I know that you said there's no wastewater limitations now for pharmaceuticals or PFAS, but if there does become one for PFAS, are you able to convert to do the facility to treat that?
So a centralized treatment system like this and like the main facility in town is the best way to manage a treatment requirement like that, like some of the ones that you had mentioned.
Okay.
So.
And then if you're not testing for PFAS in pharmaceuticals, and when you're looking at these monitor wells, how can you know that you're protecting the wells north of that?
Well, we know PFAS are in there. We know
Yes,
it.
we-
There's
yeah.
no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot more because it's all in one spot.
I
concentrated?
think we need to remember that this is all part of the Papaneset watershed. Your septic systems currently are within the Papaneset watershed. The treatment effluent is going to the Papaneset watershed. It's all contained. So this level of treatment, we can then treat if we need to because it's centralized. Right now, we cannot.
Okay. And then in terms of the well, I know the general thought is that the groundwater goes south, but my understanding that wells create a cone depression and it can pull groundwater from all directions. And how far is that radius that they can pull from?
Yeah, so a residential well, what you said is correct, but for a residential well, it won't be pulling, and it won't be pulling this towards it. Our groundwater modeling that we need to do as part of the groundwater discharge permit is going to have any wells included in that to demonstrate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Charles Horman, Pierre Veneer Drive in Sandwich. The engineers really piqued a lot of questions in my head tonight. I did some other concerns regarding the safety of John Ewer and some of the water quality issues. My neighbors question you on those. I'm not going to go into that. You also mentioned IAs. I grew up summering in Johns Pond, fishing Pompanescent. I currently live on Peters Pond. I already gave the house to my children for their future enjoyment. I care about this issue, okay? I talked to one of the town officials yesterday. My home area is in phase 2 of Sandwich within the next, like you said, 20 to 25 years. We'll be doing something. I'm thinking ahead. When I look at the costs, $40 million, and I'm going to use the figure I heard earlier, 220 homes attached to this. If you do the math, all the taxpayers in the state of Massachusetts are going to be paying, including Mashpee residents and Sandwich, $182,000 per house at 220. 86,000 of that will be paid by Mashpee residents. You mentioned the IA is $45,000. The 27 homes on Pierre Veneer would be $1.2 million to put in IAs. From an environmental standard, I got a couple questions. What is a better alternative for the environment? And number 2, what's a more cost-effective for my 27 homes on my street? What would a system like yours cost to service our 27 homes versus the 1.2 million for IAs?
So there aren't any IA systems that remove phosphorus that have been approved to remove phosphorus. And the performance for IA systems with regard to nitrogen removal are not close to what this subsurface treatment system could do. So it's hard to compare the two, or you can't just look at the two, and it's a little bit more complicated than just comparing the two. because
Are
the
you
performance
suggesting
is
that you
different.
want to advocate hooking up to our system?
Yes.
And
Anything's a possibility in the future.
And we've
So-
already,
Let's keep that door open.
that is one of the reasons why. Yeah, the thing here.
Like I said, Mr. Collins, what you said the other day, nobody's approached you and said they're not for fixing this problem. I don't know if anybody is, and I have a vested interest along with my neighbors. Like I said, I've given my house to my kids for their future enjoyment, and this needs to be fixed.
And so, like I had said earlier, we have been in conversation with the town, and your town is basically going, hey, you know what, let's see how this pans out in your town first, and before we get involved in this race. So based off their conversations, that's why when we went before the ZBA, we had this area laid out so that if Sandwich decides that if they do want to do this beforehand, we have an area for Sandwich to be able to build that facility right here already, and we wouldn't have to go back for the town to modify what we just modified yesterday. So and if you guys decide not to do and you decide to go another route, that just is other land that could stay open space. But we have planned and we have talked to, because there's been residents that live over here that since day one have been calling us on a quite regular basis going, how do we get on this? How do we get on this? And so the pipe will literally have a stub. So if Sandwich says they want to get on board, they'll just be responsible to collect the pipes to that to that stub.
Yeah, even keeping the system from $182,000 cost to $86,000, you still have to rely on future grants federally and the state level. So, and if that dries up, this project could be the Mashpee taxpayers would be on the hook for, it wouldn't, for 182,000 per house.
Yes.
So that's why I got, you piqued my interest in a future solution, because like I said, I might not be here in 25 years, but I just.
Stay positive.
I'd like to, I hope so. But I'm just thinking ahead. And I know my neighbors and I, we've talked about it. What are we going to do for the future? If our wells do get contaminated, how quickly can we hook up to water?
If we were the result of the contaminated well, that would be probably one of the fastest connections you ever seen, because we'd be told to get it done now. We've all seen Aaron Brockovich. We don't want to see that repeated, we're going to have to get it done. And it would be a huge black eye if we did. So it would be taken care of.
So I will say, don't count on your wells being contaminated by this project.
I hope not.
Okay?
I hope not, because then a house isn't livable.
Okay, they will not by this project. We're not going to impact the public health.
Okay.
That will not happen.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. Jim Killian, PA here. You opened the meeting by discussing the zoning meeting last night, which I unfortunately was unable to attend. And the slide you put up referenced the special permit amendment, but then you continued on discussing variances or a variance. I know in Sandwich, those two are mutually exclusive from one another. We don't modify special permits with variances, and I'm not even sure under 48 you can. So was a variance granted? What specifically was it for?
It's actually a modification, not a variance. I used the wrong word because I'm so used to just saying that word. It was actually just a modification of the original cluster subdivision is what we did.
Yes.
So what did that modification consist of?
Basically saying, so originally part of this deeded subdivision, you had, I think it was 31 plus acres of land that was put into open space. The requirements at the time of the special permit was 20%? 25% open space, and it was far beyond that. Then when you go to the next one, which was 2 years later, it went up to 35, and then it's now over 50% of the land. And what we asked was just to carve out this from that open space part of the subdivision, which also still allows for enough land to meet the requirements of the cluster subdivision. So we didn't make it a separate parcel. We just said that we wanted it to be named, and I think they used the thick dotted line was the big debate, the thick dotted line as the line that just delineates on the overlay of it's not considered part of the actual open space of the cluster subdivision.
So the use for the site is considered what? For that septic system?
It's municipal utility wastewater.
Okay, so did that use exist prior to last night's meeting?
So I thought it was called municipal use, but I don't.
Yeah, that might be what it is.
I thought it was just. I thought it was municipal use that was used, but I don't.
We let the attorney actually argue that.
Yeah, I don't know that. I don't know that. Yeah,
So the paperwork last night was requesting a modification to the special permit, and I'll save you all the details from the numbers, which I don't think you care about, the registry book and all that. I don't think you care about that. Modification to delineate a specific area for use as a Mashpee-Wakeby regional satellite wastewater facility within the cluster subdivision, and in parentheses, Pimlico Heights subdivision plan book. Again, all the numbers that you probably don't care about, but you can have a copy of if you do. End of parentheses. On property located within R5 zoning district, map 2, parcel 170, Mashpee, Massachusetts. That's what was before the ZBA last evening. And
So that use was in existence prior to the meeting?
I'm sorry?
That use was already in existence prior to the meeting? In other words, that lot was already zoned for that use?
Yes, well, based on, and again, I don't want to put words in the attorney's mouth, but essentially, our attorney advised us to have this modification for the purposes of going forward with the plan. We've had 2 legal opinions on the subject property. I don't know if you've had copies of them, but I know that we've distributed them widely to the public. If you don't have them, we'll be sure that you do get them.
Then those were opinions just relative to the use of the property or to the special permit?
Both.
Okay. And then lastly, one of the previous speakers mentioned the access. And I think at the last meeting, you were waiting for an interpretation from town council relative to access. Have you received that yet?
I have not. They were doing what I, in layman's terms, refer to as a deep dive research into that, and I was hoping to have it yesterday or today, and I don't.
Do you anticipate receiving that before town meeting?
I'm hoping and praying that it's coming tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak?
I'll be quick. Mine's just more of a comment than any questions. We may, Bob Dupuy, Pierre Veneer, we may seem a little crazy over this right now. Just so you know, my well is 30 feet from my property line. And you guys are talking about being 50 feet from the property line. So that scares the hell out of us, because when we bought this, I mean, when you look in my backyard, all I see is woods, and I'm gonna see a big open space now when you're done. Because you're right on my property line. So I'm gonna see the big open space. So if we seem a little crazy, if this was happening in your backyard, you might feel the same way you do. And I've seen some of the looks when we're all up here saying all our stuff. We're a little upset about this. I mean, we're losing a lot here. This is a big deal to us. We appreciate all the cleaning of the water. We use Wakeby and Mashpee, and we use Peters Pond and Sandy Neck and all these beautiful spots for why we live on Cape Cod, right? But part of that is my backyard was a forested area, and now I'm going to be looking at open space. And by the way, that leaching field is going to be really close to my well. And I know you're telling us we're not going to, but we don't know that. And I've taken people's word for stuff before, and shame on me, right? So this is not an attack on any of you guys. This is us trying to protect our house and our children and our investments. So this is not an attack on any of you. And yeah, are we going to social media and news out? We're trying everything we can, just like you would if it was going to be in your backyard. So this isn't a personal attack. This is us trying to protect our homes. Like, again, we're psyched about the cleaning of the ponds because I think that's in all our best interest. It's something we all have to do. But just understand, this is in our backyard now, and it is very close to our wells. So this is why we're a little bit tapped right now, because we literally found out about this 2 weeks ago. You're going to be approving it on Monday. We didn't get a lot of time.
Potentially the funding.
Potentially. But we didn't get a lot of time to digest this. So if we're acting a little crazy right now, trying to wrap a little protection around our homes, please understand why we're acting like this. This isn't an attack on Mashpee. It's not an attack on the people of Mashpee. I understand the cost that everybody that lives around the pond is looking at if you don't put the system in. But this is my backyard. I gotta be a little crazy. And if you didn't act a little crazy, I'd think you were crazy.
Well, I'm certainly not going to call you crazy. And we certainly respect the opinions and the viewpoints that have been expressed. And we understand the concerns that have been raised, and we absorb them. And I'm not suggesting that you and everybody have engaged in any personal attacks. It's when somebody wants to question our integrity or our good faith effort that is a little disturbing. Town officials shouldn't be punching bags. They're trying to do something in good faith for the betterment of the town and to upgrade the water quality, not to degrade it. I'm going to plagiarize what a very knowledgeable woman said at a recent meeting similar to this. And that is, no matter where we put this, it's going to be in somebody's backyard or close to it. And as a result, somebody is going to say, potentially, not in my backyard. So the problem for the town is if we're going to find a remedy for a very serious problem, I don't think any debate that we've got a crisis on our hands in regard to the condition of the pond. If we're going to resolve it, yes, we got to pay up, and yes, there's got to be tough decisions. But I can look at you and tell you and assure you that nobody here, no official from the town wants to do anything to compromise the public health and safety of any neighborhood, whether it be in Mashpee or Sandwich. We don't want a civil war with Sandwich. We're simply looking for a effective solution to a crisis problem. That's all we're doing. But we take notes and we listen, and obviously I understand the concerns that you have raised, and we're not ignoring them, and we will look forward, if this passes, to communicating with you for the sake of trying to address or to alleviate some of your concerns.
And if I may, even though you're a Sandwich resident, by all means, I think there's multiple people in this room can vouch for this. You ever show up at my office, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I always stop what I'm doing to address people's concerns on any of my projects. So if you come up with a question you want to answer now, I ask, come on down. And if you can't come down, please call the office. I spend most of my weekends, especially in the summer months, going to HOAs and going to different groups and going to see them because they don't have time to come to the town hall during business hours. People work. I'm willing to do that. I'm willing to do it now, even when if construction ever goes forward, or even before, and you come up with an idea, or hey, what if? I can't think of everything. Mark can't think of everything. I like to say I think outside the box. If you think outside and you come up with an idea, please call me. Definitely we can have the conversation, vet it out. I'll come to you, or if you want to come to me. So just because this is the last meeting tonight doesn't mean I'm not willing. If anybody knows, I like to talk. I really do like to talk. So we can definitely have that conversation at any time. It doesn't have to be now. It could be any time. And I'm willing to come at your convenience.
Okay.
I'd like to add.
The only thing I will say is, as town officials, you kind of signed up for being a punching bag.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? The other part of that I would say is our concern is our wells. Mm-hmm. So anything you can do to give us proof and make us feel comfortable with that. I mean, I'm still not happy about the trees missing in my backyard, but the well is like a primary concern. Mm-hmm. And you are going to be like, you're going to be really close. Like those orange cones that my wife put up, that's how close you're going to, that's how close you're going to be to my well. So that's why we're concerned.
So just I want you to know and everybody to know that we're not going to give ourselves permission to do this. The state is, and the state won't give us permission unless the public health is protected.
Feel way better.
Well,
they're the government. They're here to help.
For someone who's I've done this a lot. The state has a very rigorous process, so it's.
Appreciate it.
I'd like to add just one more thing. I think your concerns are so legitimate. All of your concerns are legitimate. And yes, you're right. We would be concerned about wherever this is going to be, as it would be a concern if it was in my yard. One of the things you have to realize, though, is that the plans are preliminary. Do you have a footprint of how much of the 26 acres are going to be used? That's one thing that's settled. You also have the plan for how much of the rest of it is going to be turned into conservation land. And I think the important thing is you're voicing your concerns, and the engineers and the wastewater staff listening, and then being able to say, okay, now as we move forward, we're getting the permit for this, we're working with the state for this, and then we need to look at, well, how many of the trees are going to have to come down? Or where exactly is the leaching field going to be? And how exactly are we going to engineer it? Those details, those details of all of the different pieces coming together will be coming together in pieces with your input, with the engineers, and with the staff giving you the information back. So legitimate concerns, very much so. And being able to listen and trying to address as many of those as can be done. It kind of uses an example, like, I can't tell you what color the building's going to be painted yet, but, because we're not at that point. We don't even know exactly what the shape of the roof is going to be. We think it's going to be this, and we think it's going to be underground, we think it's going to be here. So the plans that are going into effect have taken into concern what your legitimate concerns were, what your concerns were. All of them are legitimate. I'm not going to just say some of them are legitimate. All of your concerns are your concerns, and they're concerns that have been brought to our attention so that we address them. Can we solve them exactly the way you want us to solve them? No, but we can try to do the best we can, and then let you know why, how, and if it's all going to be working out. So your input is critically important, and thank you for it.
I have a quick question for you, and you might not be able to answer it. Is there, if you had the opportunity to connect to a town water supply, would that be something you would want? Or is it something that the residents there said, hey, we don't ever want to be, we like our situation the way it is, and we don't ever want to be in town water? I'm just wondering if if it was available to you, is that something you would actually
I
go
think it's
into?
something we all have to consider. I'm not in a, I'm not.
And I understand that. I
Oh,
just,
yeah, if you
let's-
give me
let's
that, I'm
not.
okay.
yeah, I'm just curious. I want to,
Yeah, but,
I just want to know if there's a reason specifically before
we
I even
gotta
start
move on.
diving into something. So I just want to know. Okay.
yeah, for me, I enjoy having well water and not being tied to anybody's
Bill.
rules about my water. I can turn it on as much as I want. I can turn it off when I want, like,
Fair.
I like not having anybody else telling me what to do, and, so that's
Just was
kind of
curious.
why we're a well water community, but.
We will not get a permit if we have any chance of impacting your well. So,
Okay, anyone else that has a question or at this point a comment? Yes, come right up.
Comment, can I come with a comment?
Come right up.
Been patiently waiting for all the questions to be answered. Winnie Nukan, Natasui Talia Landry, Nutomas Masipia, Natai Masipia. So good evening, everyone. My name is Talia Landry. I am from Mashpee, and I live in Mashpee. I am from the Mashpee-Wampanoag Tribal Nation. I'm the Mashpee-Wampanoag Tribal Council Secretary, and also the liaison to the Mashpee-Wampanoag Natural Resources, as well as a Mashpee town resident. So I've come here tonight within support from the Mashpee-Wampanoag tribe, within support of this article, within this project. We really want to give gratitude and efforts to all the work that has been done, because this is a very difficult issue that we all have to face with everybody that has moved onto Cape on this man-made island. I do, as most of us within my nation, do always introduce ourselves in our traditional language out of respect for our ancestors and the ones that came before us, but also just to give a little brief history to those that have mentioned that they have not been residents to this town for very long. This pond is very important, not only to the tribe, but should be to this town. We get everything from this body of water, Mashpee. Does everyone know what Mashpee means? Mashpee is, the English version of Mashpee is Wampanoag word. That's Mashpee. It's the place of the big water. So we get our name from this pond. We get our very existence from this geographical location and the importance of this pond. We have seen all of the detriment of what has happened into Santuit Pond, and that is the shallowest pond in our area. And now we're seeing the fast, rapid rate that is happening in Mashpee, and Mashpee is the largest freshwater pond on Cape Cod. So that's why that is given that Wampanoag name. That is why we are given that name as the people that come from this land. When I say New Tomas, Mashpee, that means my blood and my bones come from this place. When I say New Tai, that means I live here. So there's a meaning and there's a reason why we come from this place and why we are all here in this place. And I say that as us, as Mashpee people, to understand the importance of this water and of the waterways that we're all connected to. You know, it came before us with those decisions to make this peninsula, sort of this arm, into an island for, you know, those trade routes, and that obviously wasn't the best decision for us future generations to come, but this is what we're dealing with now. And it's funny you say, you know, the getting rid of trees and all this stuff, and I had to close my eyes and I had to center myself, because can you imagine what my parents and my grandparents felt in the 60s and 70s and 50s when all of the trees, and we still see it today, are getting cut down, when this is the place that we come from. Our blood and our bones come from this land, and we had to see our ancestors be ripped down right in front of our face for all of everybody else right now that lives here to live here. So we all had to witness that. We all had to give up certain things to live on this land and live in harmony with our relatives, with the water, with the land, with the trees. And this project is a mechanism to help that, is to help our natural relatives. Because quite frankly, if we don't, we're gonna be in a far worse situation where we won't be here. You know, where we will be living in sewage, where our backyard will be poop and piss. You know, at that rate, we won't be able to get our food from the waters. You know, my nation, 70% of our traditional diet comes from the coast. We'll die. In the 1870 census, they said that they wouldn't move us off our land in the Indian Removal Act because they could not remove us from the sea, because we would die. So this rapid rate of pollution that's going into our waters is putting us to that point to cease to exist as a people, because it's getting us closer to that point to die, because we won't have access to our food sovereignty. And so this is just one of those mechanisms to help that. And I'm sorry for trying to be able to talk to the audience, because I think that's who I'm trying to talk to. I'm trying to talk to, you know, my neighbors and my relatives, that we all live amongst each other. And our relative is that water. Our relative is that land. It is those trees. And all these people are working in their best efforts to ensure the safety of us as people and of those natural relatives, especially the water. And the land is going to keep thriving, and we're gonna put mechanisms up, you know, as the superintendent was saying, with different pollinators, and there's so much different things that we can do. A lot of my talks, I have to go into this, because now we're in this new era that, you know, we're having to face this climate crisis. So conservationists are opening their ears more to indigenous values, because we have noticed there's a difference between Western conservation values and indigenous conservation values. And within our values, we understand the importance of balances like this, of having to, you know, do something in order for another thing to thrive. You know, so a Western conservation value system is don't touch that tree, or, you know, like within the cedar swamps, don't touch those trees, because, you know, we protect them, we're losing them. But then indigenous value system, we need to touch those trees. We need to, you know, groom them and prune them and make them be able to grow life. We need to get rid of the old so the new can have space and they can see the sun and they can grow. So this is all within the same efforts of that harmony and that balance. And so I really needed to come here tonight, because I did hear, you know, of the oppositions. We do see signs up within oppositions, and I understand, you know, with residents and concerns, and also not knowing the full picture, because this is a full picture. If you look at the little picture, you're gonna see those negative effects that you're thinking about, like, what do I see, and, you know, what's gonna go into my well. That is important. I will agree. That is important with your drinking water. But by putting a facility like this, it's actually ensuring the safety of your drinking water, because it's putting up measures to monitor that. Because quite frankly, if you don't, you're gonna keep on drinking it without knowing that maybe even the pond is polluting it. You know, so there's so many things that you have to keep on looking the future generations of what this actually means. You know, what this facility can do for the pond and for the area and for the residents around it. You know, and then for all of us as a town, as a community, as Cape Cod. So I'm humbly asking, and, you know, not as modest as a superintendent, to actually vote yes for this article, because I do believe that this is going to be one of the best efforts to clean up this water system, and it's needed. Because if we don't clean it up, we won't be here.
I cannot believe you were able to rattle that off without looking down at one piece of paper. That was impressive. Public speaking is a strong point. All right, anyone else? Yeah, that's a difficult act to follow. Anyone else going?
Can I come back?
Well, before you do, is there anybody that has not spoken that wishes to speak? Anyone that has not spoken that wishes to speak? Seeing none, very limited on second comments, because it's 9 o'clock and I don't want to continue too much longer.
It's just a question that you said that no matter what decision you will do, you will gonna hurt people. I mean, not hurt, but people will get upset. And you're right. But in our situation is that we do not have town water and sewage and town sewers. That's the why we are bringing up this issue, because if we had town water and town sewage, probably we would not be here. Because, most of us would not, some people like the ones prior to myself, yes, they may be affected because of the yard, but otherwise they would not get hurt. But they have we have wells and we have sewage. So that is the main issue. So one thing is, as probably the end of our Pierre Vernier Drive, just before crossing to Mashpee, there is Sandwich town water there. So it's actually in our street already. So you're talking about the length of our streets, being that it's curved and it's 27 houses, probably it's a little over a quarter of a mile, 1/3 of a mile to pump, to connect all the houses. And some people might disagree, but I prefer to have town water because it's obvious that the water is good water. It's been tested by the town. I myself have to do it every 2 years to test the water. So, like I said, and if you want to hook up us, we most likely more than half will say yes for the sewers. Thank you.
And if I could just respond, sir, I think it's fair to say, very fair to say, that the town of Mashpee is very open-minded to partnering with Sandwich if this gets approved down the road. In terms of water, I know the wastewater superintendent was asking the question. I was steering away from it because the town is not the water district. It's a separate entity in the town of Mashpee. We are not the water district, and I don't want to tread on Andy Marks, the superintendent, who I have the most admiration and respect for. So I will let him deal with those questions and those issues, but it's clear that you would be open to both. In terms of sewering, before we get there, we got to get this approved, and we'll see what the people do on Monday and on Saturday, and whether it's yes, whether it's no, it's the people's decision.
Because, I'm sorry to interrupt, because even sewage, on the long run, it's cheaper connected than not connected, because you have to pump out and eventually you have to replace. Every time you replace, you might run out of land and it always costs a lot more money. So on the long run, it's a lot cheaper.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to speak again? Well, I guess gentleman wants to speak for the first time.
Dick Weiner, I live in Southport. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, so my question's a little bit more on the money side. But before we do that, what are the two lots that are right below that green area? It looks like there's two lots.
That is the open
Are they
space.
vacant lots, or are they?
Which,
Right below the.
Oh,
green-
right here?
Yeah, those.
Oh, so those aren't lots. What we were, and actually in our maps that we just reproduced, we actually changed the colors on because it looked like lot lines. Those are just delineating the distance from the lots to the dotted line, just so people can see what the distance is.
Is it an open space there?
Yes.
Thank you. The warrant article requests $25,900,000. And it looks like there's 28% of that is being forgiven by the state. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so that's a $7,250,000 that the state is going to absorb out of that money. And the basic, what we have to pay is the $18,648,000 is what I figured out to be. Is
I
that-
rounded it off to
Yeah,
19,
yeah,
but yes.
That's right.
You're getting into specific figures.
So that looks like a very good deal to me, and that's why the Finance Committee voted for the action, because it was so much money was being forgiven by the state.
And I know you're a conservative member of that Finance Committee, so I just want to remind everybody that if we were to pay for it ourselves, we would be paying,
25 million.
well, we would be paying $20,072,500 roughly, just in interest.
Yeah.
Just in interest.
Yeah, so the
So the total in the principal is $25,900,000. Do the math. I mean, it's incredible when you put it all in perspective.
From a financial point of view, it's a real bargain.
It is.
And that's the point I'm trying to make.
We do try to pursue bargains.
Now, that money, the $18 million, is that going to go out on bonds? We're going to issue bonds?
Yes, 30-year term, and I don't want to speak for the treasurer, who's not here tonight, but
That's usually what we do is
Yes.
30-year bonds.
yes.
So they'll go out as regular bonds to be put out by the treasurer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll wrap this up. In closing, I think tonight was productive in the sense that we appreciated the comments. We always appreciate the comments, for that matter. But we want to keep this basically on a charted course leading to the vote. It's either going to be yes or no at town meeting. You know it requires a 2/3 vote. If it passes at town meeting, it goes to the following Saturday, October 25th, where Mashpee voters will have, if they haven't already voted at early voting, they'll have an opportunity to vote, and we will know the end result on the 25th, if not sooner. So we appreciate your involvement, your participation, your comments, your questions, and we wish you a very good night.